Hello, welcome to the Stand Canada chapter call. We're doing an update on our focus regions and including a social media crash course. So what I'm going to start by doing is muting the people on the call here. Or rather, if you guys could mute, okay, no. So you will have the ability to unmute yourselves as you want to, as you would like. So we're recording this call for the purposes of the people who can't make it today, or if you want to be able to review it afterwards. And now let's see if the screen sharing works at the same time. Voila. Awesome. Okay, so the first little piece of feedback that I'd like to get from you guys before we get going is in the chat, if you could indicate whether you're okay with this call being public on YouTube or if you prefer it to be private, considering that there's going to be some discussion. So there's a group chat thing that you guys can all participate in. And if you're having trouble finding it, just unmute yourself and you can say that. Should have done this before the recording started. Oops. I don't see anything yet from people, so we're just going to move on, and it's not a time-sensitive thing. Okay, thanks, Katerina. It's not a time-sensitive thing, so after this call, I'll upload it to YouTube. I'll unlist it. Great, thank you, Olubanke. If anyone feels uncomfortable, just send me an email. It's not a big deal to have it as an unlisted, so only people with the link already will be able to see it. And basically the people with the link will be the people who received the email invitation. So it would basically be internal within Stand Canada. Great. So starting on to the presentation here. So the way that this is going to go, and we're going to try to keep it as short as we can because we recognize that it's exam time for everybody. So we're going to do a quick update on the Directors Conference that's happening next month. Do an overview of the focus regions procedure in light of some of the stuff that's been going on lately, just for those of you who weren't around when we made these decisions back in June. We're going to get an update from our policy team on the focus regions of STAND and what's been going on with that. And then we're going to do a social media crash course, and we're going to try to change it up a little bit by making it more interactive and more engaging for you guys so that we can really start a conversation, because this is a situation where we have a lot to learn from each other. So we've worked hard to put together a lot of information for you guys and also set up some discussion that can be ongoing in a lot of ways. So that does mean that this call is going to be a little bit longer than usual. So the people who should stay for the social media crash course are definitely people who work in social media, who are kind of designated to pass this on to the rest of the group. But if you are a chapter president, for example, and you have your social media person on the call and you got to go, once the social media crash course comes on, you feel free to do so, though you're obviously highly encouraged to stay so that we can get as many perspectives as we can get on each of these topics. All right, and we'll end with the Q&A. So just some quick words on the conference that's happening the conference is happening at UBC on January 22nd, 23rd, 24th. That's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So all the directors from Stand Canada are flying into Vancouver to the University of British Columbia for this conference. And basically, just to reiterate what we'd mentioned before, the TRC report on cultural genocide of First Nations peoples in Canada has obviously raised a lot of concerns as an organization within STAND. We're a Canadian anti-genocide advocacy organization. We are based in Canada. We were founded in Canada. We work in response to Canadian policy. It's really important for us as an organization that we reflect seriously on the TRC report. And what the purpose of this conference is to give us the opportunity to learn more about the report and genocide in Canada generally, to discuss the kind of more finer points of nuance and the really complex issues that are underlying it. And we're basically looking at this as an opportunity or a platform to open this discussion in a much broader sense. We're also specifically inviting Indigenous perspectives into this conference, and we're working with a bunch of different groups and individuals who we're encouraging to come and participate and speak with us. And then also other advocacy organizations in Canada who are also facing similar kind of questions or challenges within their organizations. So this is supposed to be a really broad-based, flexible conference that's going to be responsive to the type of feedback that we get, and we'll give you more information as we finalize the schedule. All the information will be extremely public to everyone at Stand and generally in order to justify the funds that are being used here. But you can be assured that we're all working really hard to make sure that this conference is the best use of everybody's time. And all national volunteers and chapters across Canada will have the opportunity to hear more about it and to participate in a town hall meeting on the Sunday morning of that call, or depending where you are in the country, morning or afternoon. And so I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of update that that's happening. And if you're interested in being more involved or involved in the planning process, please let us know, and we're happy to incorporate you into this and to hear your thoughts and feedback. In addition, we are also going to ask you guys to help us promote it a little bit on social media using the breadth of skills that you will get in this call in January. Okay, so moving on. Unless somebody has any questions about that? Okay. So I just want to do a quick review on how STAND chooses its focus regions, because I want to emphasize that what we're talking about with the TRC report is not, should we adopt STAND as a focus region in Canada? At least that is not something, a conversation that we're anticipating having. But how we do choose our focus regions is based on a specific procedure that was approved at a town hall meeting in June that was put together at the last directors conference. So just a little plug there for how the directors conference can be really productive as for us as an organization. So just to reiterate the mandate and scope of STAND. So the official kind of mission statement of STAND is that we are an advocacy organization working to make ending and preventing genocide a cornerstone of Canadian foreign policy. We're going to be talking about the word foreign here. We are dedicated to providing Canadians with the educational and advocacy tools they need to take action toward a world without genocide. So when it comes to decision-making of what falls within the scope of STAND Canada, that rests in the Advocacy Steering Committee. The Advocacy Steering Committee is chaired by the Advocacy Co-Directors of STAND Canada. It includes both of the executive co-directors. Right now we only have one. Policy co-directors who are in charge of research, chapters co-directors who are in charge of representing chapters, and 2 to 3 board members, as well as 2 to 3 ad hoc members, which are other people who are really interested in being in the Advocacy Steering Committee. That's a little bit more flexible. They can be from chapters, they can be from national, and we'll see how that evolves over time. As STAND is not a research institution, we are an advocacy organization. We don't judge whether or not something is genocide or not on our own, based on our own assessment. Anything considered genocide by the Government of Canada is automatically within the scope and mandate of STAND. And then in addition, we're looking at 5 main NGOs who we are kind of deferring to. If there's a broad consensus amongst these groups, then we also consider something genocide or at high risk of genocide as an organization. And those groups are Amnesty International, the International Crisis Group, the Enough Project, Human Rights Watch, the Montreal Institute for Genocide Studies, and United to End Genocide. And the reason for this is that we just don't have the academic research knowledge or on the ground knowledge, so to speak, in order to make these judgments for ourselves, and we're not going to put ourselves in the business of that, so to speak. And we're happy to work with other organizations on making those assessments. Finally, since STAND has the value of creating a space for a critical youth-led dialogue on genocide and human rights, Canada's involvement in conflicts, and the social responsibility of Canadians, all of these decisions on whether or not we should have a focus region, adopt a focus region or not, is a decision that's done by the Advocacy Steering Committee, but after the consultation through a town hall meeting with all national members and chapter members, that everyone is welcome to attend and participate in that discussion. So some of you might have been at the last one on Burundi. So just to reiterate, for those of you who see something that's concerning to you, a piece of news, for example, like Burundi, where you thought, oh, should this be something that STAND should worry about? we have a procedure for evaluating these kinds of things now. So if you see, for example, the news media posts that were coming out last month about the risk of genocide in Burundi, please refer it to a director. So for chapters, you're going to be referring it to me and Tori at chapters@standcanada.org. If you're a social media, if you work in social media under communications, you send it to Evan or Sarah. And that person is going to assess whether or not there's an urgent humanitarian crisis, and if it's possibly within our mandate. And following that, that director will refer it to the Advocacy Steering Committee. The Advocacy Steering Committee will send out an email and give the team 24 hours to respond with the recommended actions. So the Advocacy Steering Committee then decides whether to call a town hall meeting and decide whether or not this should be a focus region of STAND, and then adopt a new focus region if the town hall meeting agrees, or to recategorize the conflict as outside of scope, or a third option to recategorize it as possibly not within our scope, but with an option for supportive action. So for example, right now with Burundi, through the town hall meeting and the consultation that you guys gave us, and also through the research that the policy team has been doing, we haven't determined that there's a concrete enough risk of genocide in Burundi right now for it to adopt it as a focus region, but we're watching it very closely, and we've categorized it as 3A, which means that if other organizations other partner organizations that we've worked with are running campaigns based on Burundi, we are very much encouraged to support those campaigns. If there's no urgent humanitarian crisis, the same kind of procedure happens, but there's just more time. So the policy directors have 30 days to do some research into the matter, and then the same kind of procedure goes from there. Finally, the directors also have the option, based on their discretion, to say that a conflict is not within our mandate and doesn't fit the criteria of genocide. So they can refer to the Advocacy Steering Committee, or they can just say that they don't think it's within scope, but they have to defend that decision in a written response to the person who referred the item. And they also have to CC the entire Advocacy Steering Committee in case there are any conflicting opinions. So I just wanted to go over that really quickly for you guys. You can read all about it in more detail in the Focus Regions Procedure document that is in Google Drive. Chapters can access it there. National volunteers can also access it if you just search in Google Drive. And if you'd like to have more discussions with us about how this works, we're really happy to do that. I just wanted to show you guys that there is a procedure that doesn't say this is how we have to do it, make or break it, but it is any action that we take has to be justified against this procedure. Yeah, so any questions about that?
I think for questions, it might be better for people to just unmute themselves and voice whatever question or concern they have rather than typing, because I think that'll take a long time.
Totally. Thanks, Evan. Oh, there are chat messages here. Sorry, I didn't see them. Okay, great. Okay, so moving on to the focus region update. So because we had the town hall recently, whether or not we should adopt Burundi as a focus region, Katarina is going to update us on that, and also on a couple of other things that have been going on related to our existing focus regions in STAND. Katarina, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Adi. So I'll just do a quick overview of our 4 current focus regions, which are Iraq and Syria, which are 1 focus region, Sudan and South Sudan, which are 2 separate focus regions, and Myanmar. And I'll also touch briefly on Burundi as well, which, as you know by now, we've adopted as a region to watch. So I'll start with Syria, and I'll just give a brief overview of the Trudeau government's sort of latest policies, as well as a brief overview of the STAND Director special meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. So as you all probably know, because it's been all over the news, the Trudeau government modified its promise of accepting 25,000 refugees by the end of 2015 to accepting 10,000 by December 31st, 2015, and another 15,000 by February 2016, and that brings the total to 25,000. On December 3rd, Canada announced it would stop bombing ISIS, but it will continue supporting and assisting French interventions in the Middle East and Africa. And this is what the French call Operation Barkhane. There's also been rumors, or maybe rumors is a harsh word, but there's been indications that other forms of Canadian military presence will remain in Iraq and Syria, such as Canadian air-to-air refuelers and other sort of military vehicles, although the fighter jets will be pulled out. And Trudeau has also promised that he will increase Canadian Special Forces presence in Iraq to train proxy forces. Right now, that means the Kurdish Peshmerga. It may possibly also mean the Iraqi army. Canada is also aligning with NATO in terms of supporting Turkey over the incident over the downed Russian jet over Syria. Stan Canada's directors had a special meeting on Iraq and Syria on November 30th. And so we discussed the refugee situation, the humanitarian situation, and Canada's military and diplomatic involvement in the conflict. And our wonderful policy research team is working very hard on some new research that will be ready by January 1st. So you can all expect to see an updated set of recommendations for Iraq and Syria by mid to late January. In terms of Sudan and South Sudan, there really hasn't been a lot of Western media coverage, but just some things I was able to piece together. So on November 23rd, what was the 10th round of negotiations between government forces and rebel groups collapsed, and the fighting has resumed in the Blue Nile and South Kordofan states. But when we talk about the fighting resuming, we have to one very important thing to keep in mind is that the fighting didn't cease for any political reasons necessarily. It ceased because of weather. The rainy season interrupted any fighting because it made roads impassable, and now that the dry season is setting in, the roads are once again passable, and that explains why the fighting has resumed. And the governor of the state of South Kordofan recently stated that 2016 will be the final year of the conflict, and this implies an intensification of fighting in order to score a decisive victory. So that might be a very likely prospect in the coming months. Government forces have a history of using aid as a weapon of war, and in addition to this, indiscriminate bombing has made farming virtually impossible in Sudan. And what this means is that right now, about 140,000 people are facing malnutrition, and we have a serious humanitarian crisis looming. And so as a result of this, 115 Sudanese civil society and humanitarian groups have sent a letter to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and US President Obama, and they're appealing for UN and American unhindered assistance and relief toward this humanitarian crisis. In South Sudan, the August 26th ceasefire agreement was signed, but again, as in Sudan, the fighting continues, and the conflict has recently spread to West Equatoria State. And in late November and early December, about 4,000 people fled into the neighboring DRC, and this included both South Sudanese people as well as refugees from DRC who had fled violence there to South Sudan, and now they're fleeing back to their homeland of DRC to escape violence in South Sudan. And one sort of glimmer of hope here is that church leaders have been successful in brokering some community reconciliation efforts in central Equatoria State. But in any case, in both Sudans, there's definitely violence spreading, and humanitarian crisis is looming as well. So these are things that we need to keep an eye out for. A quick post-election update on Myanmar. So again, as you know, the NLD swept the November elections with 80% of the vote, and the EU and the Western media has lauded the credibility and the transparency of the elections, the sea change and the new wave or the new era in Myanmar politics that the elections signaled, even though 4 million people, including the Rohingya, but other minorities as well, were banned from voting. And in fact, there are reports of, quote, strong evidence of genocide of the Rohingya emerging. And the UN is right now urging the Myanmar government to sign and ratify two key human rights treaties. And these are the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. But there are no indications yet that the government of Myanmar will sign them. And again, coming off the elections, the US has temporarily lifted shipping restrictions on Myanmar. And the shipping embargo that the US had imposed mostly affected the trade, which was controlled by the junta-era business tycoons. So the two things to watch for Myanmar are Myanmar-China relations, because this has implications for regional stability, as well as the Western attitude, that is the tension between human rights and business interests, because the West, but also China, Korea, and Saudi Arabia are investing in Myanmar's oil and gas infrastructure, and the main pipeline passes through the Rakhine and Shan states, which is where the Rohingya are concentrated. And lastly, a quick update on Burundi. So 277 people have been killed since April, according to the latest figures available. And last week, the US warned that Burundi is on the brink of civil war and has called for regional mediation. But Burundi's large and influential neighbors are sort of busy with other business. So Kenya has some international criminal court cases, Tanzania has a new government, and Uganda is in the middle of elections. So they haven't been able to dedicate very much effort to mediating the conflict in Burundi. There are some signs of hope. On December 3rd, the government opened talks with the UN, and on December 8th, 100 opposition protesters were released from prison. And their release coincided with the EU talks on whether or not to continue aid to Burundi on grounds of the jailing of protesters, the shuttering of private media, and the closing of NGO bank accounts. And the Burundi opposition is calling for UN involvement in the crisis talks, but the UN seems to be of two minds. On December 7th, one UN official said that the moment isn't sufficient to address the threat of escalating human rights violation, while on the following day, another UN official said that the situation is very dangerous and that everything is possible, meaning full-blown civil war and genocide. So there are some mixed messages coming out of the UN, but in any case, the UN has made it clear that they are not sending peacekeepers yet. I think the emphasis is on yet. We'll have to follow the situation and see what happens. So that wraps up my little overview of the focus regions, and I will turn things over back to Adi.
Thank you so much, Katerina. I know it's a busy time of year for everyone, so the amount of work that went into this is really appreciated. It's a lot of information in a short period of time, and I'm sure people who are like me, who have a million emails waiting to be read in their inbox, appreciate the verbal short update. So the next part of the call is going to be a social media crash course. So there are going to be a few people working on this. One is, or there's a few people who have worked on this over the last several weeks. So myself and Victoria Fleming, the other chapter's co-director, I know a lot of you haven't met her yet. You will soon. She's not going to be at this call, but you'll be hearing from her with check-ins for each chapter. So she's going to be doing one-on-one meetings with each of you over the next couple months. And then the communications directors, Evan and Sarah. So I think Sarah also can make it today because of work, but Evan is going to be doing the bulk of the presentation. And in addition, we got the social media coordinator, Kitty Shepard, who also has very graciously agreed to come and work with us on this. So I'm going to hand it over to Evan now, if that's all right.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Evan. I'm the co-director of communications, as Adi just said, for Stand National. And today I'm going to be discussing some of the challenges that we face as an organization in the digital realm, and specifically relating to social media. So the intent of this presentation really is just to provide you with some, we hope, useful information that we've found and some sort of tips and tricks that we've found to be useful in managing our own social media accounts. It's not intended to be prescriptive. in the sense of, this is national policy and you must do this. We're just sort of sharing information and trying to start a dialogue so that we can sort of collaboratively find out how we can better use social media as an organization to pursue our goals. And the structure of this presentation is basically based around the poll that we sent out to you guys earlier, asking you to select what you thought was your biggest challenge out of the 5 that we identified. And these 5 challenges, which are now coming up on the screen, are 1, time management, 2, people power, 3, platforms, 4, engagement, and 5, choosing your content. So if we move to the poll results, you can see that by far the biggest thing that you guys identified as a problem was engagement. And I think that that's a good thing, because I'd say that's a pretty important topic, and we'll be spending a lot of time talking about how we can increase engagement. And the other thing was platforms. So yeah, we're going to be going over both of those things in detail, and we'll try and focus on answering any outstanding questions you guys might have in regards to those 2 points. So before we get into the 5 main questions, I'm just going to start off by outlining 2 key points that I think are really important to social media success. And the first of these is goal setting. And this is important mostly because it allows you to think about why we have social media in the first place. What role is it fulfilling in our organization? For instance, do we have it to share information on chapter events, to increase overall awareness about genocide within your campus community, to recruit new members? Social media can be used for lots of different things, and all those 3 things that I just pointed out are included in that. However, to get the most value out of our social media presence, it's really important to figure out your goals first, and then to find the strategies that you can use to attain them. So goal setting is super important, and we've sort of outlined a 3-step process that you can use to guide you when you're setting your goals. The first thing that I think is really beneficial in this process is to complete an overall assessment of your existing social media strategy and presence. So look at what you're doing on all of the different platforms you use, and try and sort of take a clear-eyed look at what is and isn't working. And I think it's important in this to keep a really open mind and to be pretty exacting in your analysis. And what I mean by that is that you should compare your social media use currently to the ideal for your organization based on the goals that you've identified. So what would your social media pages look like in a perfect world if you're doing absolutely everything possible to achieve the goals that are most important to you as an organization? The second step would be to set goals, and more importantly, to attach them to key sort of performance indicators, to measurable metrics, which can be used to gauge your success. So for this, it's obviously really important to know what you are trying to achieve, and then to find out what kind of information is on offer on the various platforms to help you understand whether what your current social media strategy is working to achieve your goals and what can be improved. So for instance, if you want to use social media to increase engagement with other students in campus groups, you could set a goal of having 100 new active Facebook fans from within the student body by the end of the school year. Or you could say that you want to have X number of retweets or post shares in a given month. And alternatively, if you want to use social media as a recruitment tool, you could set the goal of having 5 additional general members by the end of the year, or increasing your response rate to calls for volunteers by X%. So obviously the metrics you choose will be dependent on the types of goals you have. And it's really important then to think about which metrics you should be looking at and what their connection is to your goals. And the third element of this process is to tailor your social media to these goals. So once you've figured out what you want to do and how to measure your success, you have to figure out what kind of content you need to be posting, when you need to be posting it, and those sort of things, just to tailor the actual stuff that is going up on your pages to these goals that you've identified. So for instance, if you want to increase recruitment, one way of doing this is to make sure that you're regularly posting about volunteer opportunities on your pages. I know that we've had some success advertising things on LinkedIn in this way. Also, if you want to increase campus engagement, you can try to build connections with other groups by friending or following their social media pages and reposting and commenting on their posts. And we'll revisit this topic again later under the topic of engagement. So just a final note on this, I'd like to point out that this is actually quite a difficult process, and it takes a lot of thought and a lot of experimentation. Experimentation is key because you're probably not going to set upon the ideal social media strategy for you on your first attempt. So it takes constant monitoring, constant questioning to see what strategies are successful and what can be improved. And the second point that I wanted to introduce to you is consistency. This is, again, something that's really important for maintaining the credibility of your organization. And it's also something that can be seriously challenging for volunteer-run organizations like ours because we have such a high rate of turnover and people are often engaged in school and work responsibilities that have to be prioritized first over their volunteer work. So it is really important. And that's the reason why setting a clear plan and sticking with it is such a key part of social media strategy, because it means that even when an important team member leaves, taking their accumulated social media expertise with them, you still have a clear and consistent game plan to hand down to the next person. And that's a big part of what I'm trying to do as a communication director this year, is to try and develop a coherent strategy that can be passed on to the next person who takes over my role. So we're going to move on now to the next point, which is the first question that we identified, or problem, if you want to call it that, and that is platforms. So what social media platforms and tools should we use? So as you can see from this graphic, there's kind of a dizzying array of different social media platforms. It can be a little bit overwhelming trying to pick which ones are going to be the most useful for your organization. So hopefully we can demystify this a bit. So this slide gives a little bar graph on nonprofit social media platform use. So this is sort of an objective way of measuring what other organizations like STAND choose as far as where to engage on social media. And as you can see, Facebook is by a pretty significant margin the #1, followed by Twitter, LinkedIn, and then YouTube. And then there's quite a big drop off as you get into the, I would say, the somewhat more informal and socially oriented platforms like Pinterest and Instagram. This also may be because they're slightly newer than the other ones, but I think the general sense is that the most useful platforms for social media are Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and that's certainly what I've found in my experience as a social media or communications director / social media guy so far.
And that definitely ties back into like the goals of what is it that you're trying to achieve as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the next slide, we're going to go over what each of these platforms is for. Okay. Sorry, just organizing my notes here.
So the bullet points here are the platforms that STAND Canada currently uses. But maybe some of the chapters are even using different ones.
Is anybody getting a lot of use out of Instagram or Google Plus or any other platforms that we haven't mentioned here?
Is any human benefiting from Google Plus?
That may be a long shot, but just thought I'd throw it out there. Anyway, you can just think about stuff that you want to bring up later, and we're going to have a little discussion slide at the end of this section where you can ask any questions. So for now, I'll just launch into different platforms. First one I'm going to address is Facebook. This is, as I said, the most used platform for nonprofits, which is partly due to the fact that it's so widely used that there's millions of people on Facebook, so it's a good way of reaching a large audience. It's also unique, however, among social platforms in the level of personalization. Because so many people use it as a tool for personal communication and relationship building, the expectations for what a nonprofit like STAND should do on Facebook differ from platforms like Twitter. So Facebook can be used for one-to-one communication with community members and other advocacy organizations, which really helps in building personal connections within and without your existing network of supporters, as well as in sharing information. So we've been using it to share information with other advocacy organizations and to have discussions on what approaches we should take to crises in different countries that have come up over the past couple months. It's one example of how it could be used. Also, a Facebook post, as you know, can be more than 1,000 characters as opposed to Twitter's paltry 140 characters. So it makes a very good platform for longer form announcements where you want to make more of a personal appeal that might take a little bit more space, a little bit more of a word count to get across in a way that is convincing to your audience. And it can also be used for things like event promotions, organizational news, and commentary. Specifically, commentary is the added space allows you a lot more leeway in that regard. However, the fact that it's dominated by personal communications means that there are higher reputational consequences associated with perceived spamming. So for an organization like ours, it's good to generally keep the posting frequency on Facebook somewhat lower than on other platforms, especially Twitter. So what we do at the national level is we target about 2 to 3 Facebook posts per day, whereas on Twitter, we have a target of about 7 or 8. And this is just to avoid basically annoying people by filling up their Facebook feeds, which is apparently something from the research that I've done. Posting frequency on Facebook that is ideal for an organization like ours is quite a bit different than on a platform like Twitter because of the expectations. So moving on to Twitter, it is a bit less personal and a lot faster moving. People tend to use it more for entertainment, public debate, and less for building and maintaining their personal networks, although it can be useful for this too. For instance, I've used the conversation and direct messaging function to have some really good conversations with members of other organizations. And you can also use it really effectively to engage with your own community. So if somebody comments on one of your tweets or mentions you in one of their tweets, it's a good idea to engage with them directly via things like direct messages, and also to give them some shout outs if you happen to post something that is relevant to them. Also at Stand National, we partly because there's so many posts per day, we use this as a platform to distribute a lot of news updates and articles. And that tends to take up a relatively large portion of our Twitter feed compared to our Facebook. And it's basically, I'd say Twitter is an invaluable tool for increasing the visibility of your organization among a wider audience, particularly through using tools such as hashtags, which allow you to attach your posts to broader discussions and debates. But it's important to keep in mind, very time sensitive. Because of the nature of Twitter, things are happening very quickly, and if you want to get involved in a particular conversation, you have to sort of strike while the iron is hot so that you don't get your tweets buried under everything else that happens subsequently. So moving on to YouTube, this one we found really useful for sharing original content that we've made, and particularly recordings of meetings like this or town hall meetings, which I think are really valuable resources for chapter members, but people are often not able to attend them for various reasons. So YouTube, we've predominantly used as a platform for sharing videos that we have recorded of chapter events or national events, online roundtables and such. But it is also a really great, it provides really great opportunities for you to create and share your own content. And I think videos can be really engaging as compared to other sort of more static forms of content. So that's something that we're working on at national level too. I know that the Stand UBC chapter made a great video at I believe their chapter or their recruitment day or something. I can't remember the name of the event, but it coincided with our campaign where we were having people add their own little comments to these posters that we came up with, these I Stand For posters. So people were writing, there was a video of people writing their own messages on these posters, a montage that was created with some music that we shared on our social platforms. And I think that was a really good example of using YouTube to create your own original content and to kind of show people what you're up to as an organization. And this is especially important for nonprofits, which are expected to have a strong community-based ethos and are expected also to be very action-based. So showing people what you're doing sort of in physical space, IRL, every day is a really good way of getting people involved and sort of increasing your credibility as an organization. Moving on to Instagram. This one's not used by a lot of nonprofits, but it is one of the most popular platforms among younger people, which means it may well become more important later on. We have not done too much on Instagram over the last little while. I'm going to try and I'm thinking of ways to try and figure out ways of exploiting the unique advantages of that platform. But this is still sort of a work in progress at the national level. But I would encourage anybody who has an Instagram account.
Evan, you're cutting out. Evan. Okay, maybe pick up where you left off there a little bit. Yeah, Stan has used Instagram in the past for basically pretty much just short campaigns. You're back? Can't hear you. You're muted.
Hi.
There you go.
Sorry for the internet problems there. So yeah, SoundCloud, we created a SoundCloud account to share the podcast series that we've just started out. So it's essentially, we're just using it as a hosting site. LinkedIn is a little bit more useful because it allows you to connect sort of on a professional level with other advocacy organizations. It's a good place to have conversations with people in sort of like-minded organizations where you can share resources or explore new collaborations, things like that. It also, because of the fact that it is a very sort of professionally focused platform, their expectations of conduct are also very professional. So again, spamming, there's very high reputational consequences associated with spamming on a site like LinkedIn. But it is an ideal place to advertise things like job postings for volunteer positions and to build relationships with like-minded organizations. Okay, so moving on to the next slide.
I just want to point out one thing about LinkedIn is that for national, it's particularly been interesting to try to experiment with connecting alumni from STAND. Mm-hmm. And we've had some success. We do have a STAND alumni group with some of the founders of STAND. Like there's some 50 or something people who were super involved with STAND over the last 10 years. So we're going to try to work a little bit more on that, I think.
Yeah, I think our use of these platforms is, as of now, less than perfect, but we're constantly trying to sort of work towards bettering our use of them and figuring out how we can use the unique characteristics of each to our advantage. And that's kind of one of the themes of our presentation. Okay, so I think we'll now move on to the next slide, which relates to using metrics to evaluate goals. And we have sort of a list of the different metrics that you can use that are provided to you for free by the different social media platforms that you may be using. The first of these is Facebook Insights. And this is basically a panel of detailed data on page visits, likes, post engagement, things like that, that's provided to Facebook account administrators. And going through these insights with a fine-tooth comb is, I find, the best way of figuring out what works and what doesn't for your Facebook posts and fine-tuning your strategy and response. So it's a really good way of picking up on how what you're doing is affecting the level of engagement. You can measure sort of how many likes or shares your posts are getting, what posts at what time of day are getting the most exposure, things like that. So it's a really useful tool. Again, for best results, it's important to be monitoring this data all the time. And that means it's really important to have a dedicated social media person, as viewing and sorting through this data takes quite a lot of time and effort. The next one would be Twitter Analytics. It's similar to Facebook Insights in that it allows you to see how many times your posts are viewed, shared, and clicked. So it gives you a basic overview of your stats regarding engagement and how many people are actually visiting and looking at each tweet. Through monitoring this data, you can see what characteristics are shared by successful and unsuccessful Twitter posts. And the same thing could be said of Facebook Insights. And this allows you to adjust your process accordingly. So that's the main reason that monitoring this data is so important. For Twitter, things like mentions, retweets, and shares are also particularly significant, as it shows the degree to which the stuff you are actually putting up on social media is driving engagement and increasing your visibility outside of your sphere of existing supporters. And this should be a primary goal for Facebook and Twitter especially, and social media usage as a whole. So driving engagement really is, I think, the one thing that we're always looking to when we're making tweaks to our social media policy or deciding what kind of stuff that we should post or how we should behave on social media. It's all about driving engagement. And there was also a couple of external tools that Adi referred to me when we were putting together this presentation. One of these is BuzzSumo. And Adi, could you explain a little bit about what BuzzSumo does?
I think it must have been Tori.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, I thought that, okay, that must have been Tori.
There are lots of other types of external tools that you can use that are based on, you can go around and look for, there's like a million blogs that are tracking all the different ways to track metrics on social media and grow your followings and whatever. So if you identify what is the goal that you want to achieve, figure out some way of being able to measure it, basically.
Yeah.
I think that the Twitter analytics is something that was launched like relatively recently and is super useful. If you have a Twitter account and you're using it and you're not looking at the analytics, I highly recommend taking a look at it because there's a lot of information you don't get just from looking at your regular Twitter.
Yeah, it's really fascinating actually because it really demystifies the whole process and shows you exactly what you're doing right and wrong. So it's a really good way of sort of quantifying the benefits of, for instance, adding a post or an image to your post or something like that.
Totally.
Those metrics to work on your strategy.
And
so yeah.
And then also like other types of external tools that can be useful for metrics is something like if you're thinking of using a different kind of hashtag that you've never used before, you want to look for a hashtag that might connect you to a conversation in Twitter. You can also look up online and see how in use different hashtags are and who's using them and things like that. And that's something to think about also.
I've gotten a lot of use out of this page that gives a list of specifically Canadian politics related hashtags.
Yeah.
That was really, really helpful during the election campaign, just to sort of let us know what the appropriate hashtags were to use when we were discussing a given issue. But as Adi said, there's a huge amount of external resources on this, some of which we've looked at, and there's a huge amount more that we haven't looked at. So yeah, there's an almost infinite amount of information out there that you can use to better your social media activities. So moving on to the next slide, we're just going to give you a couple of general tips that we've found pretty helpful in driving engagement. The first one is tag organizations when a post relates to them. So other NGOs that you have some connection with, either because they have a similar mandate to STAND or somebody who works there is a former STAND member, or if you've met somebody from that organization through attendance an event. All of these are sort of good ins to build connections, and then you can solidify them by building that network on social media by sort of mutually supporting each other's posts. So by tagging organizations when a post relates to them, they'll be more likely to see it and thus to share it with their audience, and hopefully they will tag your post in the future. The next
everyone
one
who's working on social media professionally is everyone's trying to do the same thing and get their audience engaged. So if you be nice to someone, they'll be nice to you a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's mutually beneficial. So don't worry about reaching out to groups who you may not have talked with before. I think in most cases, they will understand the benefits to them as well. And I think, yeah, as Adi was saying, everybody's kind of looking towards the same goal, which is increasing their audience, increasing engagement. So generally, I think you'll find that people will be willing to help you out with that as long as it's reciprocated.
Especially if you suck up to them a little bit by being like, hey, you know,
Yeah.
put together this awesome article and we're sharing it, and then they'll say thank you, and then they'll share one of your things.
Absolutely. Flattery is good, but also backing up what you're saying by then actively sharing with and engaging with the stuff that they're posting is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on to the next one, just a reiteration of the importance of hashtags. We were suggesting using one or two, just because overloading a post with hashtags can make it extremely clunky to read, and it may not actually add any value to your post if you're using the wrong ones. So it's really important to, before you use a hashtag, use online resources like Twitonomy, RightTag, and hashtagify.me. They're all listed on the slide there. To find the appropriate hashtags. And you can also use that list of Canadian politics hashtags that I alluded to earlier, which can be found with a simple Google search. The next point, respond when somebody mentions stand or comments on your post in a timely manner. The timely manner part is really important because you want to sort of give the impression that you're engaged in the community. You are looking at your social media account regularly and that you care enough about these people who are taking the time out of their day to mention you in one of their posts or to comment on one of your posts, that you do care about them. And that's really important. That's going to help you build a more solid community online and to drive engagement by exposing your stuff to audiences of other organizations. And it also can help provide sort of a more personal connection between stand community members and the organization itself.
Even if it's to say thanks for your comments.
Yeah, even really basic stuff. It's just really being there, just putting off a sense of involvement and engagement really helps. Okay, so the last one would be share and comment on others' posts. That's sort of related to engagement as well when they're relevant to you. So it's just that idea of being a part of the community, being present and not just using your social media platforms as a megaphone to amplify the messages that you're trying to get out to other people. But just sort of think of it as a two-way street, and it really is a communal basis for communication. And the more that you take advantage of the communal aspect, the more important that you will be in pursuing your goals and communicating what you want to say.
Great. So a lot of the kind of basic social media stuff has been covered in this first section. And we just want to stop for a second to ask the different chapters, especially now that we have you together here, what are the platforms that each chapter uses? Can we go around? We will start probably alphabetically. Laurier?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We use, for the most part, just Facebook. We were going to try to use Twitter as well at one point, but we've just found that, I don't know, personally, like not a lot of us use Twitter as much, so we decided to just focus more on Facebook.
Is there another chapter who has a similar kind of experience?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Yeah, it's Hermione from the UFT chapter. Facebook is predominantly a platform that we're using. I know we kind of like are inspired a bit by like National Geographic's like kind of photojournalism on Instagram, so I think that can be like a really effective way to like move forward in reaching different audiences or like the same audiences but more directly.
Awesome.
Also, using visual content on Facebook and other platforms is super important too, and that's something we'll get to later. But that's definitely a really good way of increasing your profiles, just attaching images.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. UBC?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Facebook has been our priority. I don't even know if we know our Twitter account password. Unfortunately, that was something that was.
Don't say that to me.
I'm sorry. we've tried to figure it out, but our Twitter is directly linked to our Facebook, and so we know that we do post on it. It's something that's kind of been on the to-do list for a while.
Yeah, one of the things that at National we're trying to do is make a repository of all of your passwords so that between transitions we don't have that kind of issue, but certainly that's been a thing. Evan, do you have any examples of how using Twitter more has, what would you say for chapters could be the benefit of Twitter specifically?
I found, well, one example of something that was kind of unique to Twitter was when we did a live tweeting of the Monk foreign policy debate during the last Canadian election campaign. And that's something that, yeah, is sort of unique to the format. That kind of stream of very sort of temporally bound little comments is something that you can't really pull off on Facebook, partly because of the posting frequency thing, and partly because people really aren't following their Facebook in the same way to keep up on news and current events, like really current events, events that are happening instantaneously with the posting. And yeah, Twitter is a really good platform for doing stuff like that, things that are a bit more spontaneous and give chance for involvement in sort of real time for the people who are looking at your feed.
Would any chapters, do you guys think that that'd be something that hypothetically you could do? So say you're doing a panel discussion, you have someone from your team live tweeting it?
No one's actually, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a good idea. It would just be a matter of someone actually being available to do it, I think.
Yeah. Natasha, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to kind of second that it's more just making sure. I mean, it's something that I think it would be a great idea if we can get things in order.
Yeah.
The good thing about that is live tweeting, you only really need somebody available for the couple of hours that the event is taking place and who has access to a phone with Twitter on it. So it's not like a super work intensive thing, but it really does help to sort of make you seem like you're more involved on your Twitter account. I think people really respond to those kind of sort of real-time events on Twitter.
Totally. A couple months ago for work, I was at an awards show that the company that I work for was up for an award. And I just sat in the back, someone who's at the event. And I just tweeted, congratulations to the different people who won. And I tagged them. And we got, a huge bump in traffic on our Twitter base because of that. And we built relationships with the people who were also at that event. And, you can have someone tweet something something they think is interesting, every 5 minutes or something, even. It doesn't have to be a super involved process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the tweets can be pretty basic. I think people just really like to have that sense of being involved in the event as it's going on. And that's something that you can really capture using Twitter.
Another thing that I find Twitter is specifically useful for is building relationships with organizations specifically and media. So there are lots of people whose job it is to be on Twitter all day. And it's boring if it's only you talking into the void. So if you want to reach out to specific organizations or big organizations who you don't feel confident would respond to your email, I don't know, example, Oxfam, I don't know.
New York Times.
The New York Times, exactly. If you tweeted that, you're actually way more likely to get a reply than in general.
Yeah, I think if you send an email to their press officer, you have a 1%, if that, chance of getting a reply. Whereas if you send a direct message to someone or one of their Twitter accounts, there's a much higher chance of that happening. So yeah, it kind of makes those organizations a bit more accessible. So don't be afraid to reach out to people, even if they seem too big or intimidating, or if you don't have any connection with them.
And even your campus media too.
Yep.
Who was it who said that they were using Instagram or Pinterest or something? Didn't somebody say that?
We weren't using it. We were just kind of
Sharing it.
inspired by the use of it by National Geographic.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Natasha, can you share, or Melody, maybe can you guys share how you guys found Instagram useful in the stand up campaigns?
We didn't use Instagram.
Oh,
Not
yeah?
to my knowledge, no.
So what did you guys learn from that in terms of social media engagement? You did it on Facebook mostly then, right?
Yeah, the I Stand For campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, we predominantly used Facebook to do that, and then obviously I think Evan mentioned that video compilation from Imagine Day. Unfortunately, we had a bit of an issue with our some stuff over here with the signs not being available, but that's a whole different UBC matter. But the time that we did have the signs and everything, that those were kind of the two ways in which we, I guess, broadcasted them.
Awesome. Does any chapter want to share how they measure their success on any platform, or have any advice of something that they've learned from?
Definitely, I would say like the photos are a big thing, as Evan said. When we had the I Stand For campaign, we were just doing one photo per day. And like if there was somebody that lots of people knew from campus, those ones were the ones that got more views and likes and retweets or reposts and stuff.
Totally. I think I mentioned this in another call, but for me, for example, my mother is a teacher in Vancouver, and she is like a social media superstar. Like I work in marketing professionally, and every time she puts something on Facebook, she gets like 500 likes. And for me, the big coup was to post my I Stand For picture and get her to share it. So,
Yeah, it's really important to leverage the connections that you have with people on your campus, people that you actually know, in order to build your social media network, because those connections are sort of pre-existing. You don't have to put the work into establishing them to begin with, and then again, the networks that these people have themselves are pre-existing. So you can, if you reach out to somebody you already know, and that they can then share your content with their entire friend base or whatever, that's a really simple and good way of expanding your reach.
great. So maybe we can move on, and we'll try to get the pace a little bit on this. So moving on to the organization and coordination of social media.
Yeah. Okay. So the first step in organizing a social media team is assessing your internal capacity. So who in your existing team or existing stand personnel has a knack for social media, and what kind of skills do various people in your team have that could be useful? So for instance, there could be somebody who is really skilled at or interested in storytelling, or who is a social media junkie already and is always sharing updates and posting things. And I think it's really important to use those people, to use those existing skills and enthusiasm, because that's really what is going to set your content apart, is if you have really dedicated, talented people who are interested in the job. The second one is choosing your platforms. So just go over this briefly. Basically, the number of platforms used should reflect the size of your team. I imagine for most of us, the team is going to be pretty small. So we would suggest limiting your platforms to maybe 1 to 3 at the most, if you have only one social media coordinator responsible for all of them. It's important to be realistic there. So the third one, establish a schedule. Basically, it's really important, touching on the point of consistency that I brought up earlier, to have a consistent posting schedule, which means setting up a plan and making the expectations of when posts need to go up and how many posts known to your team members. And the final one.
Can we just stop really quickly and ask the chapters, like, does anybody actually have a posting schedule, or is it kind of ad hoc for most of you guys?
Mm-hmm.
I know at UBC we've tried to kind of set up a schedule, although I'm not sure. I don't think we've kind of been able to stick to it just because of people getting busy and then the winter holidays. But we initially tried to, so good intention, I guess.
Yeah,
Anyone
during the I Stand For campaign, we had I was like, the other girl who was supposed to be organizing the social media stuff was pretty busy, so I was just going and scheduling the posts for like one post every day for a week. So once a week I would go through and do that. But just since the campaign has ended, we haven't been as busy on the social media side. So if there was like another campaign or something, that's what we'd usually try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind with scheduling is it's not just sort of the days you're posting on and the frequency of posting. It's what time of day. Like the time of day that you post can make a huge difference on how many people will actually see or engage with the post.
We'll get around to it later, right?
Yeah, we're going to get to that later, but just something to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, oversight and feedback. Another really important point. You need somebody who's sort of looking over your social media activity with a strategic eye, I guess, and who is always sort of monitoring the data, seeing what could be done better, and reevaluating your social media practices. And this should be done regularly, and then you should have probably discussions with your team, to the people who are actually posting the content, to sort of evaluate what you've been doing and to discuss new insights that you've gotten, or new ideas that you've come up with. Again, this is really important here to keep an eye on the data, the Twitter analytics and the Facebook analytics, to have an objective sort of sense of what's happening on your social media profiles. All right, moving on to the recruitment side of things. As I said, it's really important to try and look for people who already have a demonstrated interest in social media, or who have a knack for storytelling or producing interesting content.
Or people who are looking to develop that skill.
Yeah, or if it's really interest. I mean, existing skills are great, but if having somebody who's really interested in the role and who is dedicated to it is probably the most important thing. In a large part because of the consistency aspect. Somebody who enjoys posting on social media is likely to be a lot more consistent in their posting than somebody who doesn't, for instance. The second thing that I would point out is to make sure that roles or expectations and expectations are clearly defined. Basically, running a nonprofit social media account or a commercial social media account is really different from running a personal account. So you should try and make that as clear as possible to people when they apply for the position, or when you're discussing the position with them, and define the expectations, which will be based on the strategy and the plan that you come up with. And lastly, pardon me?
Which can change from year to year, from semester to semester.
Yeah, I mean that's the plan is constantly changing, because the platforms that you're working on and the audiences that you're trying to engage with are constantly changing too.
Mm-hmm.
So those expectations will shift, but it's important to make sure that they're clearly defined at the outset when you're taking people on, so they don't get overwhelmed. And moving on to the last point, this is about sort of marketing the position of social media coordinator. And I think it's a really good idea to highlight the value, not just to Stand, but to the person who's actually going to be taking on the position. So basically pointing out things like this stat that I have on the slide here, that social networking has basically exploded over the last few years, and there's going to be billions and billions of people using social networking technology by 2018, according to this, 2.5 billion. And there's no shortage of data out there talking about the sort of social media as an industry, how it's really blown up over the last couple of years, and specifically social media marketing, and how useful those skills are going to be in communications fields going forward. So basically, yeah, I'm just saying that it's a really good idea to make sure that you are emphasizing the benefits to the person who is thinking about taking on the role, as a way of marketing this position.
For example, for me, like I studied philosophy at school, and in my undergrad, and I learned how to read and write coherently, and that led to social media, but also the fact that I was working with Stand and doing social media through Stand was a big thing for me when I was going to interviews and whatnot, and ending up getting the jobs that I got. So it has its long-term impact there.
Yeah, and it's really good to sort of frame it as a way of getting in on the ground floor, so to speak, for people who don't necessarily have prior experience, certainly professional experience managing social media accounts, and just sort of to let them know that this is a great opportunity, a learning opportunity, and career development opportunity for them, given that this is an expanding interest or industry.
Yeah. So from your guys' experience, do you want to share any learning experiences or one time where you hired a social media person and you realized, oh wow, this is the person I should be looking for, or some tools that you found that helped you learn better? Going reverse alphabetically. U of T.
Well, right now we're kind of restructuring our executive team. So like we have applications due this week. So we're looking for like a specific person who wants to be dedicated to like social media communications kind of section of our group. So we're kind of like seeing where that goes.
Do you think you have a kind of clearish picture of what it is that you're looking for while you're doing that recruitment?
I mean, definitely the things that you guys mentioned, someone who's like dedicated. They don't have to be an expert on social media, but someone who enjoys using the social media platform, and I don't know, is kind of creative in a sense in that they can kind of come up with new ways to engage like with our peers and stuff.
Awesome. And UBC maybe? Anyone want to share?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. We did actually hire a couple people like for marketing and then graphic design this year, which was kind of new for us. So, and I think it's been, really successful. The people are really great, and it's, if anything, it's just getting that, making sure that they have an interest in not just learning about social media, but the cause as well, I think is really important. Yeah, that's kind of what I would have to say about hiring and stuff.
Awesome. Gloria?
We hired someone at the beginning of the year for social media. He hasn't really done as much as we were hoping. So we've kind of been just taking it into the hands of myself and the VP for now. But I think in the new year, once we have a meeting and we're all back, we're going to kind of just try to figure out how we can do more of that. And then maybe other people who have smaller tasks can also do more of the social media stuff.
Cool. So what do you think some of the challenges would be with having more than one person doing social media?
Well, I think it would just be to make sure that we're all cohesive with the way, it doesn't sound like there's 12 different people making posts, and that we kind of sound like one group. And I think, again, that would come with the scheduling. If we could have maybe take turns scheduling, or give each person certain responsibilities for the social media, like one person in charge of keeping track of what Stand Canada is up to, and then someone else on campaigns and things like that.
Okay, something for everybody to think about. What's the kind of division of labor maybe? What are the roles? How can people be clear about the expectations for them? So that leads into time management. See if we can go through this one.
Kitty Shepard, our Deputy Director of Communications for Social Media, is actually going to be taking over for this section of the presentation. So Kitty, do you want to introduce yourself?
So, hi everybody, I'm Kitty Shepard. I'm based in Montreal and I work with the national team. So when you're thinking about scheduling posts, like a lot of you say, we all have our lives going on outside of Stand. I've been doing the social media since the summer now, and we've figured out a 9-0 schedule which allows you to kind of balance what you have to do for stand and your other responsibilities as well. So an app we use is Hootsuite. It's a really great app. It allows you to schedule posts throughout the week. So I kind of put aside one day on the weekend, maybe a Sunday, where you can schedule your regular posts. So any events you're having, any action alerts, blog posts, you can schedule those in, normally in the mornings as well on Facebook and Twitter. And then you go around those and you can fill it in with articles. So I'll normally do the whole week of like kind of those promotional posts, and then fill in with articles up until Wednesday and do a midweek review to see how the posts are doing. And it's really important too with the time management that you do work in time to reflect on how your social media is performing. So on Wednesdays, I'll put an hour aside to kind of just see how my posts are trending. If having this post at 10 a.m. as well, 8 p.m. and just making little notes of that as well. It's really easy to use and it takes a lot of pressure off. You're not constantly worried about it. It's going to go out as you kind of plan for it. And that's about it.
Great, yeah. Other tools, if you want to get more into Twitter, TweetDeck is like really awesome. I don't know if Buffer has a free version, but there are lots of different management tools if you have some preference one or the other, and depending on the type of platform. And I think that Facebook now also has an in-app scheduling, so you can actually from within Facebook schedule your posts in advance and optimize things for the picture and the title and things like that, which is great. So we kind of discussed this a little bit, but does any chapter want to talk about the time allocation you have for different platforms and how you've overcome them, if at all? Great, so since we've already covered that, let's keep going. Engagement.
Okay, and that's back to me. Okay, so now we're moving on to the final of the 5 questions that we identified, which is how do we better engage our audience?
There's one more, but yeah.
Oh, we have one more. This is 4. Never mind. Content, I forgot. Well, this is the last one that I'm going to be doing. Yeah, and I think this is probably the most important question in my view, anyway, since engagement is kind of what we're aiming at. Here we have on the next slide a little infographic that Adi found, and there's 2 particularly relevant points for us on this graphic. The first is the one on the top left there. Very simple suggestion, just make it a conversation. And this means trying to direct your social media activity towards creating as much dialogue between you and your audience as possible, rather than just using it as a soapbox or a means to transmit information, sort of a one-way stream. And this can be as simple as just phrasing the text of your posts as a question, rather than as a declarative statement. And as simple as this is, it has actually been found to increase the number of likes, comments, and shares you get on a post by up to 100%, according to social media superstar John Hayden, which is the guy who's quoted on this graph. But yeah, I found it incredibly useful, actually, like to the point of where you can take a post that maybe didn't do so well, rephrase it as a question, and you can see like an immediate increase in the number of clicks that it gets, the amount of engagement that it gets. And the other one that I thought was particularly relevant to us was get visual. This is on the top right-hand corner if you want to read along. But basically just means adding graphics and images to your posts is a really, really good way of increasing the amount of exposure and engagement they produce. And often it can be like an exponential increase. I'm often amazed at just how much of a difference it makes. Just having sort of a nice, attractive little image at the bottom of a Twitter post or something, as far as the amount of attention it gets.
Another kind of little thing that I've just been kind of thinking about lately is, I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience where you're on Facebook or something and you see a post and it's like, the UN says that the risk of genocide in Burundi or something, right? And you want to click on it, click like, and then you're like, do I want to say like for this? I don't like this. I want to support the post. I want to share the post, but I don't like that this is happening. So something to think about, maybe like, how can you phrase things so that it invites participation from people to be supportive? It doesn't work in every case, for sure.
Yeah, somewhat of a special case, but you should always be thinking about how you can phrase your posts in order to both sort of maximize engagement with your audience and to best represent the views of Stand as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
To try and create a sort of an ethos, which is fitting for a youth-led advocacy organization.
Yes.
So not to go too in depth in that, because that's a huge topic, but just something to think about. Another way of getting visual, which is really useful, is infographics. And this is something that we've just kind of started to do. We produced a series of infographics a few months ago on our focus regions. And I've used them a couple times to as sort of generic image attachments to posts about those regions as well. So you can use them repeatedly if you want to. It doesn't have to just be a one-off. But these are really great ways of conveying information in a way that's visually engaging and is actually likely to drive engagement and traffic on your social media pages. And there's also a lot of tools that you can use to create these graphics, which don't involve messing around in Adobe Illustrator for 5 hours. There's online tools like Canva, which we actually have an account. We have a Canva account at National. I'm not sure if it's free. Is it free, Adi?
It's free as long as you upload your own graphics.
Yeah.
So there are some like little tips that you can have there. So if you want to, and you use the free layouts. So a lot of images you can find online if you just search and try to look for PNG, like file endings PNG, because those will often have transparent backgrounds, so you can put them on top of other things and it'll look good. Anyone who wants to know more about that is welcome to ask questions.
We'll go a bit more into the process of actually creating your own stuff later in the content section. But you can also share infographics that have been created by other organizations if you want to, so long as they're copyright protected or anything like that, which they generally aren't for advocacy organizations. And that's just a really great way of making your page more visually interesting and driving engagement. And that's really,
especially on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter, it is sort of an exponential increase when you attach an image to a post. I mean, it just looks way better. Like if you're looking at a Twitter feed, compare one that's just dominated by a bunch of posts with lines of text and hyperlinks to one that's broken up with bright, colorful images. It's a way more interesting experience for the user, and I think it kind of excites people a lot more than just looking at a bland block of text.
A tweet is 140 characters, but a picture is what?
1,000 words. There you go. Although actually attaching pictures to your tweets does take up a few of the characters that you are allotted, so keep that in mind when you're drafting.
Yeah.
Okay, the next slide is basically talking about how you should structure your engagement with people and the various different methods of engaging with your audience. So as you can see, there's lots of different ways of doing this. But I think you could sort of divide it along the axis of internal and external. So it's important to make sure that you're engaging internally by recognizing your volunteers and your supporters. So giving shout outs to people on social media for participating in an event or doing something is a really good way of sort of rewarding people for their work, showing the community ethos of Stand, and making sure that people are engaged and rewarded for the work that they're doing. The second one is advocacy. That's sort of external. So engaging and sharing with the content of others. So you could be sharing other NGOs posts about the crisis in Burundi, or an issue that you have a shared interest in, and also trying to encourage other organizations to share your stuff. And that's a really great way of growing your audience. sort of getting your message out there to a wider and wider base of people who might be interested in the things that Stand are doing. And the third one here, appeals, since chapters don't solicit donations as far as I know, or is that Advocacy?
I think that sometimes you would, but I haven't seen any chapters do that online. In general, for Stand, we don't spend a lot of time doing donation solicitation, but is there any chapter that's soliciting donations online? Guess not.
I would hesitate to spend a lot of time on social media asking for donations, just because I think it seems to kind of conflict with the nonprofit ethos if you're taking up a lot of posts asking for money. We generally just have a donate button on our newsletters and on our website and allow people to sort of find their own way. For the appeals, I think the thing to concentrate on is things like action alerts, appeals to outside actors, people within the government, decision makers, etc. And that's another way of increasing your profile via sort of outside engagement.
Sign the declaration, things like that.
What was that?
Sign the declaration.
Yes, things like the.
So, sorry, Evan.
Okay.
If we can power through a little bit.
Yep. And so 3 tips for engagement. Stay involved. That's sort of relates to the community aspect that I alluded to earlier. So basically, you should always be monitoring your profile to see if there's people who have messaged you, or organizations have gotten in touch with you who you think you could collaborate with, and to always sort of be mindful of that when you're doing your social media stuff. It's also important to learn about your audience. So what time should you be posting, what kind of content is good at different times of days, and what kind of content is your audience most likely to be interested in. That's also really important. It's also good to use your audience to expand your circle organically, which we talked about earlier again. So leveraging the existing connections you have with current and former Stand members or advocacy partners to expand your reach. So moving on to number 2, personalized content. This relates to the sort of getting visual stuff that we talked about earlier a little bit. So plan on including photos in your tweets as much as possible. There's a stat here that Adi pointed out that tweets with photos are 94% more likely to get a retweet. So keep in mind when you're scheduling your post. You need a constant stream of compelling images to really drive engagement. And also, it's a really good idea to have sort of a behind the scenes posts, especially for chapters. So you could have photos of your members setting up for an event or participating in a meeting, etc. And this is just to sort of let people know what you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis, and building that sort of community and advocacy ethos, which takes sort of demonstrated action.
Tag your university, the building that you're in, take pictures of the food that you have at the meetings to tend to.
People love all those details. It makes them feel a lot more connected, and that can be especially useful in a campus community too, just sort of contextualizing things in that way. And the third one I'm going to go over is repeatability. Haven't really discussed this yet, but yeah, it's important to keep in mind that when you have a success on social media, there's nothing wrong with reposting that that post that got 100 likes or whatever. Novelty is not perhaps as important as we sometimes think, and it can be really beneficial just to find out what has been successful and to keep doing it. So pay attention to the metrics, to the amount of likes, shares, views these posts are getting, and repost the ones that did well, and that it can include appeals or news articles or whatever. But yeah, just keep an eye on what's doing well, and don't be afraid to repeat things that are successful.
Awesome. So does any chapter want to share a kind of experiment that you're working on, success that you've had, some best practices that you've learned regarding engagement? Like UBC, did you guys see a bump in your traffic after that video you did of the stand for? Lori mentioned that you guys had a significant increase in traffic when you were posting the I Stand For pictures.
I think
Yeah.
that definitely, yeah.
Yeah, we had an increase in traffic with the stand photos, so we got lots more views on our page and lots more posts and likes.
Awesome. Any other kind of success? Okay, we're a little pressed for time, so I'm gonna keep going because I just really want to talk to you guys a little bit about content. So let's see how I do this all at the same time. Hold on. So as much as Evan is right that engagement is like the #1 thing you want to worry about on social media, a lot of the ways that it's a chicken before the egg kind of situation with content, because original content gets engagement more than anything else. But this can be a little bit complicated for you guys, especially for chapters, since a lot of you aren't necessarily producing original content on a regular basis. So the first note that I kind of want to make about this is regarding national policies, things that you guys should consider when you're putting out your content in general. Thinking about, does it fall within our mandate? As I've mentioned to you guys all in the orientation, so not specifically the people who are on the call right now, which is good, chapters are very much encouraged to post things related to our focus regions and genocide. And you can also post about other relevant things according to your own discretion. That flexibility comes with the responsibility to make sure that you're staying on message. We're all working together to make sure that the stand message comes across in a strong way. So we've never had an incident where a chapter was posting about something that they shouldn't, that caused questions and concerns elsewhere. But something to keep in mind, like how close is this related to our mandate? How close is this related to our scope? How clear are we going to be if something is outside, you know? And then also to think about the visual brand that you're sending. So you guys should never be in a situation where you're using an old logo or where you are using something that's too low resolution. All the logo files are in Google Drive. The graphics that Stan puts out are also put there. Think about how you're using the official colors of Stan. So while we have red, black, and white, the black should be an accent because we want red and white as Canadian colors to be on the forefront. And we also don't want to carry things down like really heavy, despite the fact that we're talking about really serious topics. If we have very dark images, that can decrease engagement and add maybe like a little excessive amount of drama to things. So we want to encourage people to have an image of Stan that it is not like we're all going to sit around talking about genocide and crying at each other. Like, that's not what we're doing. We want to be moving forward towards change. We want to be trying to make an impact and having conversations and facing difficult questions and topics. But ultimately, you guys know what I mean. And you're also welcome to approach National to request help with any type of posters or something, questions or graphics, anything you like. Feel free to contact me or Tori or Evan directly if you like. And then in terms of creating original content, so you have a few options to think about. On the one hand, it's Stan policy that chapters don't have their own websites. However, you can think of your Facebook page as a kind of mini website. And if you would like to create something like a blog series, which I've talked to several of you about, and we've done this in the past with chapters, you're very highly encouraged to collaborate with the communications team at National on the creation of blog series. It can be a short blog series based on topic. It can be a one-off thing. Someone in your membership is feeling very passionate about something and they want to do a blog post. Team up with National, we'll put it on the Stan Canada blog, and you can share it as you like. So another type of thing you can do is photos and infographics and videos. So UBC, again, you guys did a great job with the videos during the I Stand For campaign. Laurier, you did a great job with the I Stand For photos. Last year, U of T was producing some really great artwork for their posters. So all of that is something that you guys can think about in terms of creating original content. Make sure you make event pages on Facebook for all of your events, even meetings, big ones. That can be a nice record of them on Facebook so that your following can go and look and see that you've had events in the past and what they've been about, and it'll give them a better sense of what you guys are doing as an organization. It also makes it easy for National to help promote for you guys. So here's a reminder to use the event promotion form that you can get from your chapter president at any time. You could also create your own YouTube channel to record your events. If you think that you will use it enough, you're also welcome to send them to us to post it on the national YouTube channel. But if you have your own, you have to link to Stand Canada's YouTube channel in your channel description and also in every video you post. And send us the links for your videos so that we can add them to national playlists. So some ideas for posts just really quickly: upcoming events, something that's going on with a partner organization or a business that you might be working with on like a fundraiser or something, a new campaign, announcements, right? You can spotlight a devoted member or team member or volunteer. A focus region, you could go deeper into the policy of a region or an individual who's like a player in that conflict to produce kind of educational content. You can spotlight a like-minded organization or individual for the work that they're doing. You can work on education, sharing news stories or interesting facts related to STAN, give descriptions of what we're trying to do. For example, pieces of our policy recommendations can be adapted into posts and kind of cut up and used over time. You can share tips on what action supporters can take to help your cause, share information, sign petitions, et cetera, et cetera. So another thing that I want to, sorry, I did not change that slide there. Another thing that I want to focus on is ethics very briefly. So just to get a little bit more interaction with you guys as we focus on this last 2 slides of this presentation is, so looking at this picture here, I came across this on Facebook a couple of years ago, and I've been using it in a lot of workshops that I do on ethics. So just to hear from you guys, if I were to ask you where this picture was taken, anyone want to guess? I imagine the silence is because there is no way of knowing that. This image does not tell you where it is. It does not tell you who is in it. It does not tell you when it was taken. None of this information is present. What is the conflict? Who is there? Where are the children of these parents, or the parents of these children, for example? All of this information is missing. So it's really important to think about the context and the story that you're telling with every graphic, especially graphics, but also your social media profile in general. What is the story that you're telling? How complete is it? How complete could it be? So just to ask you guys to participate in a little bit of like audience participation here. So if anyone had to hazard a guess of why the person made this video, this graphic in the first place. Does somebody want to venture? You can look at the subtitle here. It says, "I'm not asking you to like this, but please do share because Facebook donates $1 for these 6 children for every single share."
Maybe it's for shock factor, images like these.
Shock factor, for sure. Anyone else? Do you guys think that the person who produced this video really thought that $1 would go for every share? Maybe they did. Who knows? Maybe they thought they would shame Facebook into donating 30 grand to an indeterminate cause that hasn't been specified here. The people who liked it or shared it, do you think that? What do you think their motive was about?
I don't think that they probably thought they were going to actually donate the money by sharing it. I feel like it's more of like a guilt thing. Like you read it and you feel like you should.
A pity, to evoke pity.
Yeah.
So you can see in the comments here, please help them, crying face. You people seen, just pick, but it's real, don't ignore. I'm grateful for what I have. God, please help them, right? And then there's a critical person lying and liking and sharing this picture won't help them. If you really care, go out and actually donate or volunteer. Don't believe this stupid lying admin. Facebook won't donate. They don't need your likes and shares just to donate. And then, of course, the troll. What do you think of people like Bill Gates? So, what do you guys think that the story that's being, what is the story being told of these children here? Evan, you want to hazard a guess?
I think that for me, they're objects of pity, and this is something that you see in a lot of even nonprofit campaigning. It is used because it is to some extent effective. I mean, you can see here that this person got over 28,000 shares of this photo, essentially just by putting this image of starving, we presume, African children in front of people's eyes and saying, look how sad and pitiable they are. And while, you know, if Facebook were actually to donate for $1 for every share, there might have been some positive consequence from this, but you also have to keep in mind the negative consequences that result from organizations like ours constantly portraying the people that we are purportedly trying to help as the people who have no agency and are essentially waiting there with their hands out like they are in this image, looking for something to be given to them from you know, the benevolent people in the West. So that's kind of the main ethical point that we wanted to make with this, I think.
Definitely, and we have to recognize that the story that's being told here is a racialized story. It is a story of infantilization and paternalism, and there are a lot of negative consequences here. But there are more kind of innocuous, out of context stories. So, like, on the one hand, there's this, like, the term in the industry here is poverty porn, that we use these kinds of images for shock value, but they're not necessarily being held accountable for the story that they're telling. And we should consider, what is the impact? Like, imagine what this kid, like, if, you know, one of the children in this photo, if they're still around, if they're older, if they would look back at this and see how it's being used now, what would they think about that? And then I don't know if does anyone remember when Stephen Colbert there was a hashtag cancel Colbert going around. Does anyone remember what it was about in 2014 in the spring? Just thought this was a good example. So the Colbert account tweeted, here, I have it here for a second. And I feel weird like saying this, but okay. I'm willing to show hashtag Asian community I care by introducing the Ching Chong Ding Dong Foundation for Sensitivity to Orientals or whatever. And that was the tweet that went out from the Colbert account. And it started the backlash of hashtag cancel Colbert. Does anyone remember this?
Probably would have had to be watching the show.
Yeah.
Pick up on this, or be a super Twitter nerd.
Yeah, so this example is something where it's taken out of context. So this tweet, which is super offensive by itself, was in the context of the show that aired that day, was about the renaming of the Washington Redskins, and Colbert was making a satirical comment on the sensitivity for Orientals or whatever. He says here. He explained that the joke had been posted to Facebook without controversy prior to the offending tweet. We almost lost me. I'm never going to take me for granted. We would have thought that that a means of communication limited to 140 characters, who could have thought that a means of communication limited to 140 characters could ever create misunderstanding? So that's a nice little, like, comedic anecdote of how something can be taken seriously out of context on Twitter, and we're all responsible to make sure that we do our best to make sure that the context and the story that's being told can be as complete as it can possibly be. So I encourage you all to be very conscientious about the context that you're using, the ethics of the images that you're using, the representation of the story that you're telling, and your position and motive in relation to the subject of that photo or another piece of content. Does anyone have any kind of like story that they want to tell where they learn that, maybe? A learning experience? I've had like 100, but...
Not necessarily a story, but I guess that's one of the hesitations for using an account like Instagram, because there is little context.
Mm-hmm. It's really hard to show that. I remember someone was brought up when we were doing infographics for the to promote like what MPs were saying about genocide during the election campaign. Someone brought up the point like, how are we going to put these comments in context? You know, like maybe this MP said this at this time, but then the rest of all his votes or actions or something were against the sentiment of that comment. So we have to think, how are we going to show the context? Anything else? Comments there? Okay, so the last point I want to bring home here is credibility. Check your sources. always check your sources. And you know, most of the people in STAND are students. This is not a new concept to students. We don't require or expect that you cite everything through Google Scholar or something, or use academic references, but do make sure that you're using credible news sources. And even with the news, take it for a grain of salt. How many times has it happened over the last long time that the news has been overzealous in reporting something before it's been confirmed? So always take a thought to that, and make sure that you're training your social media people and the new people that you're recruiting to think about these kinds of things. What is the ethics of this? What is the story that we're telling? What is the context? How credible is this information? Okay, so last thing. I feel like this call is really running long, so I would really like to encourage you to think about this. I'm going to wait like 5 seconds to see if somebody has a comment that something that's been burning on their mind. And otherwise, I'll let you guys go with one last short announcement. So yeah, there are some things to think about, and it'd be great to continue this discussion with you guys and to share across chapters. What is it that you guys are doing? How are you solving problems? How are you identifying them? And so on and so forth. So if you have any comments or questions, trying to see if this kind of workshop format in the calls can be useful to you, and we're always going to be working on improving them and making them more interactive. Please send your feedback to me and Tori, and we'll be really happy to hear. We have a bunch of plans for the new year, advocacy workshops and whatnot, other things. And please let us know what we can do at National to make your social media use and your communications engagement more involved, better supported. Think about other things that I didn't even mention, like how do we use the National website? How can you guys be more visible on the website? How, do you guys use email campaigns? We didn't talk about that at all. National does. Do you want to be represented in ours? Lots more questions to talk about. This was just a very small piece in a long period of time. So I want to remind you guys that the next chapter call is going to be a town hall meeting on January 24th at 11 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern, which is an irregular time, but we had to do it during the conference. So I hope that everyone here will be able to participate, and many more people from the chapters. There's going to be a lot on the table that day. So mark your calendars, and more details will come shortly. Do we have any final things before we wrap it up?
I just have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the next date of the town hall meeting, or not town hall, like general STAND meeting, or will there be one of those in January as well?
For the chapter call, we don't want to overburden you guys, especially because I imagine that January is going to be busy. So unless there's a specific reason to have a chapter call, I think we're going to combine it with the town hall. Does that sound
okay?
Good idea?
Yeah, so the next chapter call will be February?
Yeah.
Okay. What time did you say the one in January is at? 11 a.m. Pacific?
Yeah, so 1 p.m. Eastern.
Okay. Thanks.
We'll send out emails and everything, don't worry.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Great.
And could I just respond to Banke's comment, which was regarding the blog, how do we know that people are actually reading the posts?
Oh, sorry. I didn't see.
I just saw that myself. Basically, I get a weekly email from Google Analytics, which shows the page visits, basically a comprehensive overview of the data regarding who has been visiting our webpage and which subsections within our webpage. So if you're curious, you could ask me and I can have a look to see how many people in a given week are reading the blog posts. It's hard to say that everybody who is visiting the page is actually reading it all the way through, but that's a sort of a decent indicator.
Yeah, and maybe we can think about how to make that information more public within Stand so that people can see what the results, especially the people who are writing those blog posts and who want to know if they're getting exposure. And also to think about, if you're a blog writer and and you want to promote, like share it on your account and tag people and share within your network. And if everybody does that, we'll gain exposure much more quickly.
Yeah, the best way to get people to read them is to share them on social media, I think, and share them widely. Use your own networks.
Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending this irregularly long chapter call. There was a lot of stuff that we had to brief you guys on. All of this will be online. I'm going to unlist this video because of the type of stuff that we talked about. But anyone who has the link will be able to see it. And there's one last thing. Tori is going to get in touch with you guys for scheduling chapter check-ins. So she's going to sit down with you, and you'll have the chance to meet her and get to know her a little bit more, which will be great. So have a great night, everybody.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Evan. Bye.